Welcome, everyone. My name is Costa Antoniou from People Insight. I'm your host today. Delighted to have you join us for this webinar session. There's a lot you're going to get from this, I know it, and we're joined by my partner. We've been working together for a while now with Alice, and we've got a lot to share with you. Some housekeeping tips to ensure you get the most from these sessions. First thing is post-webinar resources. So there's going to be quite a lot you're going to get from this, lots of insight. Do not worry if you don't capture something down, if you miss something, if you want to learn more about something, there's going to be email coming to you afterwards where you can revisit the webinar itself. And we're also going to share the slides of the webinar itself, so you can go through exactly the slides we're going through here today. If there's something that sparks your curiosity, your interest, if you hear me say something or a question come through that you want to learn a bit more about, there's going to be the opportunity for you to click on the link that gets you to a meeting page. You can book a meeting with one of our experts. My colleague Ryan is going to share that link in the chat box, and I believe we've got a QR code later on you can also scan should you want to book the meeting towards the end. And also, we value your feedback. I am hosting, yes, facilitating as well, but we want to hear from yourselves too. So we want you to share your observations, your opinions, any questions you may have. And there are two ways you can do that. One is on the top of your Teams toolbar. There's the emoji reactions button. What would we do without emojis? And you can click on that and you can select and react to something you've just heard. So just a little example if anyone wants to share. So welcome, hearts and claps, thumbs up, always welcome. And the second is just using the chat box feature. If you have a question, observation you want to share, throw it in there. Hopefully later on, we've already picked up lots of questions that have come through, and I know Alice is going to be answering some of them as we go through her set of slides. But at the end as well, we're hoping we're going to be able to touch on some of those other questions that might come from this live session today. And finally, before we begin, we've got a question to ask yourself. So getting you involved already. Question is, how confident are you in your engagement strategy today? So 1 being not confident at all the way to 10, you are super duper extremely confident with your existing engagement strategy. And in fact, if you don't have an engagement strategy, just put down a 0. And I'm going to add, if you don't mind sharing a bullet point or two, what makes you select a low score like a 1 or 2 or a high score as 9 and 10. We're very keen to hear your thoughts on that as well. So it is a packed session. We've got a lot here to offer you today. So we'll do a bit of introduction about People Insight, who we are, in case you don't know us. Hand over and we'll have a bit of a conversation with Alice, who's got a lot to share about what's going on at Gleeson Homes. We'll spend some time answering those questions. So later on, we've got a few questions we picked up from before the session, the webinar itself. And also we'll pick up on this session, questions that have come through this webinar. And then we'll wrap up, go through a few other bits and bobs. Share some further information, trends with you that you might be interested in, and then wrap up and hopefully give you the rest of your afternoon. Now, for those of you who don't know us, People Insight, we are an organization focused on a mission. And this is our mission, as you can see here, is to be the most actionable employee experience platform powered by people. And there's 3 channels that really support us to get this done: people, platform, and action. Just to walk you through each of them just a bit, and then we can crack on. It's the platform part. So this is lead and survey technology, where we have a brilliant platform, easy to use, but gives you exactly what you need to get the data and insights you're looking for in a very easy and action-focused way. Platform is, of course, exceptionally important. Getting the right data, being able to read that data, being able to digest it in an actionable, focused way is essential. But of course, as you saw with our mission, it's also powered by people. So having the right people in place, working closely with our partners is also of crucial importance to us and to yourselves as well, I imagine. And there are aspects of this that help us with that. One is around client services, a client services team that's there to help ensure the survey runs as smoothly, as seamlessly as possible. Then there are expert consultants specialized in organizational development and coaching, where we really get involved to ensure we're designing the right program, the right set of questions, and also coming in afterwards to help ensure it's presented in the right objective manner, providing those recommendations, supporting the move to get things done and drive action, as well as offering tailored coaching. And then the communication element. We know the real importance behind communicating before survey program, during the survey period when it's live, and also afterwards. How do you ensure everything lands with impact to a range of staff or employees you may have, some sitting behind the desk, some out in the field as well? And not forgetting, of course, our expert tech team and BD team, who, of course, contribute to the whole mission at People Insight. Action, as we know, is all a big focus for us. So getting the data and collecting the data is your first step. And that bit is incredibly important. Asking the right questions, getting people to respond, having an incredible platform like the one we offer at People Insight, where you can read that data and understand it and digest it, get the insight from it, is great. But then what do you do when it comes to doing something with that data? And that's why the action element is incredibly important to us. And it's a cycle, really. Getting the right data, moving a bit too fast, apologies. Getting the right data and then acting on that data is what we are all about. It actually does dishearten us when we see a lack of action come as a result of the survey, but also does fill us with a lot of joy when we do see it. And here's a tremendous example. I'm not sure how many of you tuned into the last webinar with NSTAR, where they spoke and illustrated what they've been doing to really generate confidence in action as a result of the survey. And you can see how that survey over a period of a year actually has really evolved for them, where people do gain more confidence in the survey. Then more people start to participate in the survey itself. So you can see the response rate there jumping by 10 points. And that does really help sustain a positive engagement index for themselves. So really engaged workforce. Now, we work with a range of organizations, and we're very, very fortunate. We have a tremendous set of partners we have the opportunity to work with from different sectors, different size, so small, which very large, from UK-based clients to global clients to partners from private, public, not-for-profit, different industries, from retail, football organizations, construction organization, manufacturing organization, universities, and so on. Each with a very similar goal. They're aspiring to have a very engaged workforce, and that's what matters to us, is the aspiration as well as the desire to do something with the data that comes from any listening program to ensure you get there in the best possible way for the organization. Now, the question of why. What is the point of evolving an employee engagement strategy? Why does it matter? I think some of it, when you take away the data and the literature around it, it just makes sense. If you have more positive employees that feel positive about the work they do and more positive about the organization that's asking to do that work, you can imagine what they're bringing into the workplace, how they're going to do their job, how they're going to work with others, how aligned they're going to be to those objectives, and so on. But we know when it comes to convincing senior leaders, CEOs, CFOs, MDs, you need a bit more than that. And from what we know about engagement, and this literature, be it 10 years old to a year old, is saying the same thing still, which is improved and increase in a number of different aspects. One, in terms of revenue and profitability. We know when we see high engaged workforce in an organization, what we tend to see in terms of, let's say, financial outputs. We know 82% are highly or moderately engaged, so those organizations with engaged individuals typically have better results, financial results, compared to those with underperforming companies. And we know there's also higher productivity. So companies with top quartile engagement scores can expect 18% roughly higher productivity than lower quartile businesses. Now, that's just the business side. I think there's also a humane aspect to this as well. If you take away the numbers, the percentages, who wouldn't want their employees to wake up on a Monday morning and want to come to work? And who wouldn't want their employees to go home feeling fulfilled and finding meaning in their work? I think it's a double-edged sword here in a positive way. One, there's a real benefit to the organization, but also there's a benefit to that individual as well. Engaged employees, we know, also leads to engaged customers, engaged patients, engaged residents, and so on. So there's a strong link, and we've done research in this before where we have seen the more engaged employees are, the better outcome it is also for those paying customers or the person that the organization is serving. So how you do this really does depend. Every organization is different, and I'm not going to sit here and try to prescribe one approach for every single organization. How often you listen, how you go approaching that listening does vary. Does all start with the definition at the beginning, how you define clear objectives, how do you align the survey to what matters to that organization, to where it's heading, to the strategy, to the organization, the goals, the purpose, the values, the culture it's aspiring to, how you share those results transparently, making sure you get out there, you talk to staff about the results. Just before this session, I was presenting back to a organization, to the whole organization actually, and it was the same presentation I actually presented to the leaders last week. And we kept it exactly the same to ensure things were very objective and transparent, saying, hey, look, what I'm presenting now is what I presented to the leaders last week. And that does come across very objectively, and people do appreciate that and have the opportunity to observe. Having action plans with accountability. Our platform is designed to make it very action focused. The data is one aspect, but we have integrated with that the ability to define actions, track them, record them, making sure you set clear ownership around them, enabling those who are going to own those actions, be it managers, with the right level of support. And I know, Alice, we've done a bit of this with yourself as well. We're going to touch on that. And the strategic communication plan. How do we ensure we talk about this in the right way after all this work, after we've defined, collected, shared, action planned? How do we align this going forward and we keep it in that communication plan? That's probably where sometimes we get a bit, I don't want to use the word lazy, but we've got so many things hitting us as organizations, challenges, be it external we can't control, internal that just appear out of nowhere. So how do we ensure we keep this on the roadmap when it comes to communication? And now for the star of the show, going to be inviting Alice. So we've worked with Alice for a good number of years, and we love working with Alice and Gleeson. There's a lot Alice is going to be sharing about Gleeson. I'm sure some of you are curious about the picture as well, where it is. Is Alice really hanging on? So perhaps when you start us off, Alice, you can just tell us where you are very quickly and what you were doing there, and then we'll save some of those questions from coming on later on. But what I will say about Gleeson is I've always admired how things have been at the very beginning. So even when scores were not great, or response rates were not as great, for instance, what the leaders were like, how bought on they were, how they sustained their improvement over time, even going through rocky periods, especially for the construction industry. We know during lockdowns how it was very difficult. We know as a response to of course, the tragedy at Glenfell, what that meant for construction organisations. There was a lot the construction organisations were contending with at the time. So Gleeson did a fantastic job throughout that, achieving outstanding workplace awards a good few times. And I think that's not just out of luck, that's sheer hard work, effort, dedication, right action plans, and ownership throughout all levels at Gleeson. So without further ado, over to yourself, Alice, to take us through a bit more about Gleeson and what you've done. I will, just to make your life easier, I'm going to control some of the slides. Just tell me when you want me to move over.
Awesome. Thanks, Costa. Thank you for my introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Alice Best. I'm the Head of Organisational Development at Gleeson. And as Costa said there, there's a little picture of me on the side. We wanted to just show you a little bit more of who I am personally, because I'm quite happy to share that. So whilst in my day job, I am the Head of Organisational Development, in my personal life, I like to spend any free time I've got out in the Peak District. I'm local to the Peak District. I'm based in Sheffield, and like to be climbing. So whenever the weather permits that, I am outside in the outdoors and usually finish off my day at the pub, and that's a wonderful weekend and evening for me. So that's me personally. But yeah, I'm here to speak to you about Gleeson and what we do at Gleeson with our engagement. As Costa said, we've worked with Costa for about 5 years now at People Insight. So it's been an absolutely wonderful journey to kind of work alongside Costa with that. Been, People Insight, Costa and his team, hugely supportive in the entire journey that we've been through at Gleeson. So we're very grateful for that. And it's awesome to be here to speak to you today as well about some of the things that we have done over the last few years and what our learnings have been as well.
You want to kick us off, Alice, maybe with just that overview of the journey so far. What has that journey looked like? The engagement journey for Gleeson over the period of over 6-8 years?
Yeah, so we started our journey 6 years ago. We actually started with a different provider to People Insight. We had a new CEO joined us and was very much on the whole kind of people piece, people strategy, massively kind of invest in our people agenda. And with that, that new CEO kind of really held the space for people and the people agenda. So when he first started James Thompson with us, it was very much about defining who we are as a business. So we defined our culture with kind of people across the business. We talked about kind of, we agreed what our vision, mission, and values were. So that was when James Thompson entered the business that we started our people in our engagement survey journey, was to really get that feedback from people of what was going on. We know at Gleeson we've got absolutely brilliant people who are so passionate about what we do. And it was just important that we were able to have that two-way communication, hearing what's going on, but then also being able to relay what kind of actions are taking place as well. So yeah, we've continued our journey. There's been lots of challenges on the way, which I'll go into in a little bit. No journey is smooth. So there's certainly challenges that we've faced, but we've made sure we've kept our annual engagement survey going to ensure that we keep checking in with our people. We've got other forums to check in with our people and hear their voices. But the annual survey has been a wonderful kind of consistent over the last 5 to 6 years, in and amongst changes and things that have happened to the market and things that have kind of factors that have influenced the business. We've had that consistent of listening to our people and genuinely taking action. Like I say, it's definitely been an evolving journey, so I'll share some of that with you as well. But before I do that, I'll just give you a little bit more background to Gleeson. Some of you on the webinar may have heard of who we are at Gleeson, but for those that haven't, so we're MJ Gleeson PLC, and as part of that overarching umbrella, we have two core components to the business. That being, first of all, Gleeson Homes. So our Gleeson Homes side of the business is all around building homes and changing lives, and we do that predominantly in the north of England. We have around 730 employees now at Gleeson Homes side of the business. And they're very much, our Gleeson Homes piece is very much about building affordable quality homes where they're needed for the people that need them the most. And it's something that we are hugely passionate about at Gleeson, getting people into owning their own homes, having a positive impact on the communities that we're building within. And we have for Gleeson Homes around 59 live sites across the north of England, and that has 6 regional offices that are supporting each of those sites that have a diverse range of people. So very wide variety of different roles and disciplines that we're reaching out to from our Gleeson Home side of the business. The other part of our business is our Gleeson Land team. So they're a much smaller team of around 20 colleagues who are based in the south of England. And their vision is around promoting land and unlocking value. So very much working with landowners to really kind of get the right planning and permissions on that piece of land, and promoting that land effectively for them. So a much smaller team, populating around 20, but an absolutely fantastic, passionate team about what they do as well. So in total, about 750 employees at Gleeson. In terms of our background and history to where we have got to today, if you just move on to the next slide for us, Costa, I'll just share a little bit of our timeline.
Alice, I'm actually going to, before you do, just want to flag one thing here. I can see you've got your values there: passionate, collaborative, and respectful. And one thing we when doing the survey with yourselves, we asked that question: what 3 words would you use to describe the culture here? And it's of the last few years, it's incredible and always great to see how so many of the words people do flag or comment on the 3 words they pick are so aligned to those 3 values. Even if the word isn't passionate or collaborative or respectful itself, the essence of what people are saying is exactly that. So how you want your people to live and experience the workplace is exactly like the values we're seeing, which I know you guys have done a lot of work around.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention at the start of the call, the lights in this room that I'm in are automated. So every so often it may light back up as I move, or if the lights go down, I will try and kind of turn them back on in the background as well. But I am still here, even if the lights go off. But yeah, no, as you say, Costa, we ask as part of our survey those 3 words. So when we first started the survey, we used to ask, what 3 words would you use to describe Gleeson? And that's when we were starting to just really embed, how I said at the start of our journey
Yeah.
with James Thompson, where we held that space to define what our values are as a business. So that was those values, the passionate, collaborative, and respectful, what our team, what our workforce, what our people said that we are. Like I said, we knew that we have fantastic people and we know we've got great talent, but we just needed to hold that space for our people to be able to define kind of what our identity is as a business. So yeah, early on, we used to ask the questions, what 3 words? And we'd see those 3 words coming up, which was great because it meant that our values truly were what people felt we were. But it is one of the examples, one of the questions that we've evolved over the last few years. We realised in our journey that we got to the point where people knew what our values are, but we really wanted to kind of then test whether they feel like they are part of their lived experience and how embedded they are. So that was one of the questions that we evolved. And we still use to this day, don't we, around kind of do you see our leaders displaying these values? Which value do you see most effectively in the workplace? Which one would you like to see more of? So we're still checking in with our culture and how people are feeling towards our values. But it's just how we ask that question has slightly evolved over the few years. So just in terms of a little bit of Gleeson history, I'll keep this really kind of neat and tidy, but it's just kind of set the scene as to kind of where we are in our current day right now. So you can just see a little bit of a roadmap of kind of where Gleeson has evolved from. So it was in 1903 that we were founded as a business. We've gone through a journey throughout those years. For a number of years early on with Gleeson, we worked on much larger scale projects. You can see on the timeline that Gleeson was responsible for building the Lloyd's of London building. So we did a lot with kind of infrastructure. So early on, very much around much larger scale projects. In our recent years, with James Thompson being our CEO, we have focused on our quality homes that we build across the north of England for Gleeson Homes. And we do it well, and we build quality, affordable homes. So we've really kind of stuck to what we are authentic and good at right now. So that's kind of our overarching journey. So James Thompson joined us in 2019 as our CEO. In 2022, he was appointed to be our chairperson. He was actually the first person outside of the Gleeson family to be appointed as that chairperson, but has been a big part of our journeys to what we are today. So for him to be able to still kind of, drive our vision of what we are at Gleeson is wonderful. And then we had Graham Prothero, our current CEO, joined us in 2023, and wonderfully also drives the same vision and mission that James brought to Gleeson around our people agenda as well. So just a very light background to Gleeson.
Tell us about the engagement surveys at obviously Gleeson and how they've been very successful, seeing the improvements we've been seeing. What your observations, Alice, in your journey?
Yeah, so obviously I'm here to speak about our engagement surveys that we do at Gleeson. And as I mentioned in the introduction, we've got a variety of different people in different roles across multiple locations at Gleeson, either working on construction sites, working in the support offices, working in the head office. We have people from, when I say different disciplines, you're looking at technical based, commercial, construction, sales, kind of HR, marketing, finance. There's such a variety of different disciplines that we cover, and different working styles. So it's so important that we do continue to check in with our people. And I'd said this early on, whilst we may continue to be achieving positive engagement scores and remaining in that upper top quartile when it comes to comparison to our external benchmark, we still find it so important to be checking in with our people at Gleeson. We would not be able to do what we do in terms of, building these affordable quality homes or promoting the land that we do if it wasn't for the people. So I kind of explicitly just put it onto this slide that genuinely people at Gleeson are our most important asset. So of course it is crucial that we are listening to how they are, how they're feeling engaged, what suggestions they have to be making the workplace an even better workplace for them to really truly thrive. Costa, you mentioned at the start some of the so much statistics and research that goes into a more engaged workforce and what that benefit that does have to the organisation. So it truly is important to be checking in with our people. They're a great group of talent. So we've continued to keep our engagement surveys going.
And just Alice, just to touch on something there, you mentioned obviously you have a range and a variety of staff in where they work and what they do in different fields and different skills and abilities and so on. How do you go about, or your approach to personalizing the survey or tailoring it just to make sure you're asking the right things to the right people as well, rather than just a blanket approach for everyone?
Yeah, so we in terms of the kind of questions, so we work with you, don't we, to kind of tailor it to make sure it lands right. So particularly when you look at the wording that we use between Gleeson Homes and Gleeson Land. So one of our core themes, as an example, is customer care and quality and customer care. For our Gleeson Homes side of the business, that really resonates because they are, building homes, selling homes specifically for a very clear customer. Our Gleeson Land team, whilst they still have customers, it's not in the same sense as somebody who's purchasing a home. So we slightly changed our language for our Gleeson Land team to be looking at kind of stakeholder management, so quality and stakeholder management. So we do tailor it slightly between the two different branches of the business, Gleeson Homes and Gleeson Land, whilst trying to maintain consistency, because we want to have a full understanding of the overall MJ Gleeson piece, what our comparisons are kind of to our external benchmark, to, year on year, what our improvements have been. So we do absolutely evolve it. One of the other things in terms of tailoring it and kind of making it more bespoke to our people, one of the things I put in one of my slides at some point is around like our learnings, and it's about being authentic to the people that, who are your team, who are the, your colleagues across your business. I think the title of this is Don't Overcomplicate It. Genuinely mean that, kind of use the language that your people use for it to really resonate. So when you're asking certain questions, make sure it is the type of terminology that you use within your business. And this is where People Insight are absolutely brilliant in terms of being flexible for tailoring your questions. Costa, right up until we kind of go live, sometimes we're still sense checking, aren't we, to make sure that the question is right and it's right for where we are as a business at that point, but also right for the people who are going to be completing the survey as well.
Thank you, Alice.
So in terms of our timeline, like I said, we started our engagement surveys back in 2019 and then started working with People Insight in 2020. One of the great things about continuing to work with People Insight over that 5 years is that we are continuously able to check in with our comparison year on year, and even look back, so we can see kind of where there has been improvements consistently, where we might see a drop that, in a certain area that we weren't expecting to. It's certainly brilliant for being able to see that comparison piece. You can also isolate it to certain areas of the business as well, so we can filter onto our system to look at where there might be certain themes and patterns in certain regions or maybe certain disciplines. So it's really helpful that we've been able to do that over the duration of the last 5 years. One of the big things about our journey, and you mentioned it with NSTAR in the previous webinar, you said that they looked at kind of their response rate and that belief in action piece. That was also massively important for us to make sure that we are hearing from as many people across the business as possible. And we certainly have, and I'm sure there'll be other people on the session as well that have people working in multiple locations, kind of probably globally as well. We are just based in the UK for Gleeson, but it still has that challenge of people working in multiple locations, whether that's office-based, site-based. So it's that challenge of trying to encourage as many people to give their feedback as possible, because the more feedback you hear, the more, if you implement any interventions or anything as part of your engagement strategy, it's going to have a more positive effect overall. So we've really worked hard on building our response rate and increasing that over the last 5 years. And you can see we've just closed our engagement survey last Tuesday and successfully achieved a 91% response rate, which we are so pleased about at Gleeson. Yeah. I'm seeing the emoji reactions, which is really lovely. So thanks.
And we knew we were doing this webinar before your results class, so we were hoping, of course, that the results would come back positively, and they did. And Alice, people are looking at that, and even though I'm fully aware of your data, I've been working with your data for the last few years, but I look at that time and I think, wow, incredible. And I know there are people on this call looking at the response rate of 44%. I mean, 2019 is not that long ago. We're talking 5 years only, and then where you are now, 90 plus. The question people are asking, and we've actually had a question later on, I'm going to actually bring it forward now if you don't mind, but one, how And two, given the workforce you're working with at the moment, so those who are not like you behind a desk mostly, but those who are out and about, be it for construction organization where they're on site, or if you're a manufacturing firm, or if you are distribution, whatever, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, any advice for those and the people joined from those backgrounds where they can boost response rates, particularly for those out and about, hard to reach type of people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this has certainly been a learning curve for us to be able to achieve the response rate that we have. But we've definitely achieved it over a few different kind of techniques and tactics, I'd say. But the other thing I will say as well, 91% overall, but also our build who are site-based was up at kind of 85, 90% too. So they were, these are people who are not sat behind laptops on a daily basis. So we had to really look at how we make the survey accessible for people. It's much easier to, send the kind of an email through to people and they kind of complete that link and they'll see it whilst they're in the day job, just accessing things. The challenge comes when you've got people who aren't sat in front of a computer, who might get that notification, but need to be able to remember and that stick with them to be able to go back when they do have the time to access. So one of the things that we have looked at in terms of building our response rate, particularly for our site-based colleagues, is using kind of QR codes, which we have found massively popular and has really worked. So accessing the survey through a QR code has made it much easier, as opposed to needing to go into their emails and receive that email and go and follow that link. The other thing I would say is probably a little bit of a tip of advice around communication. So again, if you're sat behind a computer, it's great to be sending emails and notifications, which we would send in addition to what people in site send as well. I'm always sending lots of broadcasts from our intranet and other comms out to kind of keep the excitement going around the people survey. But really, keep it simple also. Listen to what's going to work for every part of your workforce. So a lot of our site-based, those emails notifications aren't going to work all the time. We use posters. And whilst that's not a really sexy approach to kind of drawing in attention always around a people's survey, it works. So when we say about don't overcomplicate it, genuinely posters work. Make sure you've got them everywhere. I plaster them in kitchens, canteens, where people are going to be sat eating their lunch. Everybody likes to read something when they're sat eating their lunch. On mirrors, everybody looks in a mirror. So therefore they can also see kind of things around the engagement survey. And there's been other things that we've done as well in terms of how we communicate about it, in terms of the actions that's been taken. So, we've seen an improvement with belief in action this year because of how we've evolved, that we've communicated that, by people completing the survey, what actions have been taken. Therefore, it's encouraged more people to complete the survey. Getting buy-in from management. So we absolutely have buy-in from our exec board, are hugely kind of passionate around our people surveys and hearing people's voices. But it's also getting the rest of your kind of middle management, senior management teams on board with encouraging their teams to complete the survey as well. So again, that's been a big piece at Gleeson, setting challenges and things. So yeah, it's been an absolute journey and we are super chuffed with our 91% response rate this year. It's given us a vast amount of information, which is great. So it's just now taking, kind of digesting that information and being able to take action on it.
Congratulations, Alice. I look forward to presenting to yourself and Graham. And I think in a couple of weeks, we've got the session booked. Looking forward to traveling up north. Should I move on to the next slide, Alice? Is that okay?
There was one thing I was just going to add on that very lightly is I just kind of added some of the challenges that you can see across the bottom. And I'd said earlier about, whilst we've been on this journey, we're big believers in continuing to check in with your teams and your colleagues consistently. So conducting an annual report, an annual survey, in spite of there might be business challenges, and we've certainly had our fair share at Gleeson. The construction industry have had their fair share, but lots of other industries have also had theirs as well. Don't veer away from still checking in. Keep the consistency of your people surveys in spite or in the face of change is just one of the things I would say. So here I've just kind of highlighted a few of the learnings from our journey, and we've drawn on a few of these already. So just to kind of cover these off in terms of headlines. So learnings when it comes to communication, find out what works well for your people. The reason that you're doing this is because you're wanting to ask kind of people their feedback. So find out how they want to be communicated to. So when I said about the posters, genuinely that works. If it's text notifications, it works. So use those. So listen to people and communicate effectively for what's going to work for them and for your team and for your workforce. The other thing around communication is whilst we all get a buzz of energy when your engagement survey is open, and it's super exciting to kind of drive response rates and get people on board to share their voice, that's awesome, but don't let communication just drop off at the end. You close your survey and then it's done. No, like I'd say one of the biggest lessons we've learned is continuing that communication throughout, and it's something we've really tried to focus on over this last survey year. And I don't know if that's something that's then had an effect on response rate. So we've really focused on taking action quickly, communicating about the journey that we're going on. So if we can't take action straight away, explaining kind of where we are, that we're digesting the data, we're analysing it to take the next steps. We communicated about what key areas we were going to take action on very early on. And then a few months later, we communicated about what actions we had taken action on. So it was a we're acting and a we acted. So you said we're acting, you said we acted. And just to keep that comms going, so anything that you do implement, tying it back to the survey so people know that it's from their feedback that you're implementing these brilliant initiatives and engagement interventions. Let people know and remind them that it's from their feedback.
And
So
Alice, sorry, I was going to say, how do you go about choosing, when you mention actions and time about, how do you go about choosing the right actions, aligned to the right objectives, and then working on them? If you might come on to that a bit later on, feel free to skip the question now and you can answer that later. But I thought, as you mentioned, it might be timely as well.
Yeah. So it probably fits in with the shared action piece in terms of how we choose action. So I promise you, I will come
carry
back.
on.
It's all right. So the other kind of learning at this point that I was kind of I've lent into as well is that making it relevant. So we talked about making sure that your questions are relevant to what's going on with the business right now. Make it relevant to relevant terminology to what your people use or what your business uses. That's one of the wonderful things that we've been able to do over the years, isn't it, Costa, that been able to personalize our survey to really make it feel like there's warmth behind it, like it is relevant to people. And I gave the example around our values is something that we've changed over the years. But there's other questions. When we were going through quite a stint of changes, one of the questions that we added in there was around what factors could be influencing how you're responding to this survey. And it's around kind of market effects, maybe company changes, cost of living. There was quite a few significant factors that were going on with people. So again, that gave us another tier of information, making it relevant to what's going on right now and understanding what genuinely is having an impact on people in the workplace right now. Another kind of key learning is that shared action. So, it's tricky. It's really tricky to be able to be, a small team or kind of changing the actions and implementing things that could have an effect on 750 plus people. So what I'd say is share that action, share that responsibility. So at Gleeson, we have headline kind of central actions that we put into place, but we also kind of then make them more localized. So engaging our senior leaders across each of the 6 regions and our Gleeson land part of the business to really look at their data within the People Insight dashboard, look at their data so it's more specific and relevant to their local region as opposed to taking that overarching assumption across the whole business. Look at truly what the people in your local area are saying and implementing tailored action plans for your local area as well.
And Alice, when we first started, it was primarily top level actions. And Gleeson have been fortunate in one of the challenges you don't have that we sometimes observe in other organizations is you've always had a leadership team on board. I remember when James moved away from being CEO and moved up to chairman and Graham joined, I was a bit, I wouldn't say concerned, but is Graham going to be as on board as we have seen with the previous CEO? And then the presentation last year, I think, was the first time, or maybe second time with Graham on board, and he was entirely bought into it, really cared about it, which is great. So that, I think, I'm not saying that was easy work, that still requires some influence on your side. But with the local ones you're talking about, can you just share a bit of insight in what you did differently, what else you gave them in terms of access to the platform or any support that
Yeah.
enabled them to go on and own actions at their local areas?
Yeah, so this has certainly been something we're trying to involve. Like you say, I'm very lucky and blessed to have a senior team who are hugely invested in all of people things. But I'm sure a lot of you on the webinar will agree that there's always kind of competing business challenges for what can be going on and what are priorities. So it's really making sure our kind of next tier of management are really invested in kind of the people actions they're going to implement as well. So back, I think a couple of years ago, we did it quite manually, where I say manually, the system hugely helped me with this, that I can pull off PowerPoint slides. So I could, filter the demographic on the system to one of our regions, and I could pull off a PowerPoint slide deck that was relevant to their region or any of the material relevant to their region, share that out with each of the kind of regional managing directors to digest that data and be thinking about actions that they want to implement more localized. So we did it quite manually a couple of years ago, and last year we started to use the system, didn't we, Costa, in terms of
Action planning toolkit, yeah.
yes, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely the toolkit is absolutely brilliant because it means that you can actually digitalize that action planning piece. So if you are overarching responsibility for your whole kind of engagement strategy, you can dip in and see which localized regions are genuinely kind of putting actions next to kind of key factors that look like they'll have a significant impact on engagement in that region. And they can update progress for those actions as well. So you
Yeah.
can have that kind of check-in monitor to make sure action is being taken. You also have access to that data to be helping with the comms plan for that as well. But what I will say, it's not perfect yet. We only released that first for the first time last year, and we did training with you, didn't we, for our
We did, yeah.
senior leaders
Cool.
that were going to have access to that dashboard. So we did some training, but it was partly used.
Yeah.
So this year I'll be going through another kind of journey to kind of really embed that with our senior leaders, and really kind of set some timescales and timelines for them to when they will need to have uploaded all of their actions by and check-ins.
I think it's accepting that it doesn't happen overnight, Alice, like you have, and obviously, like you're right. We implemented those action planning training sessions, dashboard sessions to give confidence. We included inspirational tips or ideas for actions against each question. Should they go in and want a little nudge of what to do, and it evolves. But it was the right timing, and given the growth of response rates, confidence in action, and engagement, I believe, I do have confidence in Gleeson that we're going to see more use of that this time around. Last year was testing the waters a bit, wasn't it? See how it was. What else do they need this time around to really boost that? Hopefully they've got used to it, and we'll see more of that to come.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be interesting to see how it goes further this year, but I have confidence that it will be used even more. And then what the question you asked about in terms of how we figure out which actions are kind of that we do take and what things we prioritize. So we look at kind of the core themes across the business, maybe in comparison to our external benchmark, in comparison to the previous year or the year before. Looking at then the free comments to give us a little bit of narrative to the background of how people have responded, to really then start to highlight some of the key areas that we do need to focus on, our key themes. The system is also a big help for this in terms of highlighting any of those comparisons, but also what will have more of an impact on improving engagement or certain areas. And also the toolkit gives inspiration points for kind of what actions you might choose to implement, to kind of have a positive impact on certain parts of feedback that you've received. So it's a little bit of a blend of things that we do, working at centralised and localised level as well. And then the last kind of key thing, I say there's been lots of things that we've learned throughout our journey, but the one thing I just wanted to highlight in addition to those other areas is transparency. And again, Costa, you mentioned this earlier on, didn't you? But it's so important to be transparent in terms of the way that you communicate. So be honest about what's going well, and then honest about the things that you strive to do better. So You said you came off a call just before this session where you'd been presenting to a company. We did that for the first time last year at Gleeson as well, didn't we? And received incredibly positive feedback. So it was just brilliant to be so transparent with people to say, this is the feedback that we've received from you. And at this point now, we're going to take this feedback and start looking at what we can implement and what we can do to make improvements. And the other thing that massively helped was actually you coming in as an external person, or, whilst people know that we work in partnership, it was really valuable to have you be able to kind of describe those themes and kind of give that feedback as well. So it helped with that transparency piece too.
I agree. Alice, just a quick time check. There's so much to share, and I forgot to even look at my poll play on my part. But time check, 1:45. So there's another 5 minutes for yourself, okay, or just over?
I'll make it a couple of minutes. So if we've got any questions, then we can try and answer as well. But like you say, you're going to share these slides. A lot of the things I've talked about already, so I can fly through, and then if
of course. And if there's anyone on the call who wants to learn more about something in particular with what Alice has shared or slide, again, there's going to be the opportunity to click and book a meeting with one of our experts at any point. So feel free to do that. But over to you, Alice.
The other thing was, I thought you were plugging connecting with me.
No, everyone email Alice. No, I'm not doing that to you guys.
No, but what I was going to say is, like, obviously you're part of this session because you are invested in this space. So, feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn as well. I'm always happy to have those conversations.
That's very kind of you, Alice. Thank you.
So in terms of, sorry, I'll make it a couple of minutes. So everyone's going to have access to these slides. So you can see this is just some of the examples of the comms that we've done at Gleeson. And there's just a very small example of the you said we're acting, and then the version of the you said we acted. And just keeping it simple, just keep it really simple. Let people know what they've said. Tell them what you're doing about it. Make it simple for people accessing the survey, I think, is one of my key parts.
And we have a question later on, Alice, which is exactly that. How do you convince people that you are doing what you said you do? And one of the things you said is, the pitfalls to avoid is overcomplicating it and keeping it simple. But the you said we acted thing is a big part of that. Is there anything else you think around convincing people that you are doing what you said you do? Or do you think this did the job for you?
Yeah, I mean, continuing communication. So it's not just about a poster campaign or the comms. I think it's when you're implementing anything that's relevant to the feedback, making it very, really clear with people that it's based off of people's feedback. I keep it through our communications throughout the year, whenever we launch anything that's relevant to what people have spoken about. Yeah, I do. I think it's continuous. I think it's keeping it simple, like you say, just be very clear about what people have said and what you can deliver and what you can kind of action against that. Don't overcomplicate it. And then I think my last slide, I think it was, yep, that was it. Don't overcomplicate it. And in terms of convincing people to take action and keep kind of responding and giving their feedback, best way to convince them is show them that action is genuinely taken as a result of them sharing their feedback. And here's just a few examples of the things that we have done at Gleeson, actually over kind of the last year or so, about implementing things. So a big action that came out for us in terms of improving communication. A few years ago, we started our company roadshows. So it was just kind of enhancing what our company roadshows were, weekly newsletters. People wanted to appreciate more about the different disciplines and what people do to be able to communicate more effectively. So we started Lunch and Learn, similar to this type of webinar. We started them internally so people could just start learning about different areas of the business. But there's lots of kind of hints and tips on here of what we've been up to. But yeah, some of the key theme areas that we've worked on, particularly over the last year, is around that communication, reward and recognition, leadership, and well-being. But yeah, ultimately, to keep it short and sweet, to be able to get more people to give feedback and to really make a difference when it comes to engagement and what the culture and the environment is like in your business. Genuinely listen and genuinely take action. And I think that's the most simple way to kind of achieve a more enhanced and suitable, relevant workplace for people to really thrive in within each of your businesses.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Alice. Quick time check. Now I'm doing my time check. We're good. Anything else to add, Alice, before we move on to some of the questions we've received before the session? I think Ryan might flag some of the ones we've received during the session itself.
I mean, there's possibly all sorts. Maybe we just go straight into the questions because there's been all sorts that we've been up to.
Excellent. Well, look, what we'll do first is we'll go through some of the questions we received prior to the session. So when people signed up, there was opportunity to share a question they had. I've tried to bring some of them forward to break it up, which we tapped into, which aligned nicely with your slides. So one of the ones we haven't touched on maybe is how do you decide which data, so perhaps Alice, you can kick us off with this, but how do you decide which data will be the most useful for your long-term engagement strategy?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to understand what's going to be most important for your engagement strategy for the long term, it's understanding truly what the strategy is for the business for the long term. Really understand kind of that roadmap of what is going on in the business. Engagement shouldn't sit separately to your organizational strategy. Understand what that strategy is to decide actually what data you might need throughout that journey, or to be checking in quite early to be able to feed into anything you might need to implement in preparation for the longer term strategy of the business.
Yeah, I love that, Alice. I think the connection between engagement strategy and organizational business strategy is vital, and that's also a way of influencing leaders and managers of how this is actually important. It's part of that same thing, and it supports us into getting there. And I think knowing that first, like you said, the engagement strategy would put you in a good place in defining the right questions to ask. That will
Yeah.
help you get the right data, which will then allow you to select pretty much most of the data you're going to get an insight from the survey itself or surveys to drive the right thing.
Yeah.
How can we influence senior leaders to put engagement and their people at the heart of their actions amidst, you actually touched on this one, Alice, but amidst competing priorities? So you did say you were in a good position where leaders are already bought in, but is there anything you can offer in terms of advice and insight that you think has helped get your leaders to that position, or anything else you want to share from your observations?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any business is probably perfect with this because I think every business is juggling different priorities at maybe different points of the year. But to really influence keeping this people piece on kind of people's agenda throughout the year, I would say make sure you're present in the right places, having the right conversations with people, and it's keeping, when I said about communication consistent and throughout the year, it's making sure you continue these conversations in the right places throughout the year as well. Another little tip that I've had in terms of influencing senior leaders, they can be quite competitive. So what's always fun, particularly around, we wanted to hear from more people, it was really making sure that people knew in terms of the response rate, what was going on, kind of any league boards, things like that. That certainly encouraged more senior leaders to be involved in encouraging their teams in the right way, to be completing feedback and sharing their voices. And we're also kind of working on kind of cascading that action planning piece more towards our senior leaders as well, and allowing them to take accountability and responsibility. Ultimately, they're responsible for driving business performance in certain areas of the business, and that is so, it can only be done if you're, prioritizing your people agenda as well as drive business performance.
I would say making that link that again you touched on earlier between engagement strategy and business strategy or goals as tangible as possible. If
Yeah.
senior leaders can see that link very visibly, I think that does make a difference. Convincing senior leaders, and we do sessions around this in educating and informing people or leaders in what does engagement matter. Why does it matter to me? Why do I want my team to be more engaged as a benefit to that person's team, to the organization and the goals as well? So making those links extremely clear, we do believe, and I'm sure you do as well, Alice, that it does help.
Yeah.
How do you convince people that you're doing what you said you do? I think we've touched on this, Alice. I'm going to skip that one. And the response rates, you did touch a bit on this. Just a bit at the bottom, I never really touched on around those who aren't digitally savvy. Do you find this challenge within Gleeson? If so, any advice around that? So people who aren't the best on computers or tech?
Yeah, no, we absolutely, and that's particularly for our build site-based colleagues who aren't sat behind a computer, and don't have access to a laptop on a daily basis. For us to be able to support them even more, it was the QR codes that have helped, but also increasing our presence around I mean, we're present all the time as a function, as a HR department, but it's specifically reaching out to certain areas of the business, being like, would it benefit me to come out to site and to help and access? We've just had a fire alarm. I don't know if you can hear it.
We can't hear it now. Should you be panicking or are you okay?
I think it's okay.
Okay.
Somebody will shout me if not. But yeah, in terms of just being more present and helping people access, like I've got my team members that we kind of share that out, and we actually genuinely go out to site and help people get onto the engagement survey.
Thank you, Alice. And just a few more. Let's see if we can get through them. So how can we balance between the making the survey short and digestible, but also, so it's something, but also gathering enough quality data to create impactful actions is their recommended optimum number of questions. I'm bringing up the second question here because I do think there's some overlap here. So I'll just share my thoughts and Alice, feel free to chip in. I think in terms of optimum number of questions, it really does vary on the type of organization. I preferably like something around 50. I don't want it to be too long. I think you can get the right number of questions for yourselves by making the question set very focused. So when Alice touched on it earlier, working together in partnership in creating that questionnaire, spending time to design that questionnaire, I think is of vital importance. I really do think there's a big element there, important element in asking the right things and keep it very focused, as well as maybe asking certain questions for a certain group and another group. I think that does really enable you to balance the number of questions. Along with the second question, free text without creating data analysis nightmare. Two things there. One is focusing on creating the right open text questions. We're big fans of creating constructive based questions. So if someone disagrees with something, tell us what you think could be done differently to X or make this better. What could you do differently? So really getting people to think constructively. And secondly, one of the features on the People Insight platform is having all comments automatically themed with AI support. And that is very useful. And if you've got, I mean, you said 700 people with a high response rate, Alice, but there are organizations who might have thousands that we work with, of course. That can become a nightmare when you've got 5 questions. So having the right tools in place to give you the right insight, and then you can spend your time on focusing what we do with that insight rather than just analyzing, is to us a key feature. How do you ensure the quality and integrity of the survey results? I might just chip in on this one, Alice. I think asking the right questions, having a partner, of course, that's trusted, where the data is anonymous and confidential, but also the approach you take in questionnaire design. So making sure it's robust, making sure the question's asking one thing rather than 2 things, making sure, like Alice said, right terminology, free from jargon, people understand what they're answering. So good face validity. You want good validity at the end of the survey, of course. You don't want the question to be ambiguous. So best practice principles around questionnaire design is essential in making sure you get that right level of quality and integrity. Now, I'm going to quickly pause. It's 1 o'clock. Ryan, I know you're on the call. I had just a couple of slides to wrap up with, but do you want to spend a couple of minutes bringing any questions you got from the chat box, or do you want me to go on to this? You lead me.
We're good to just wrap up, Costa, and then we can get back to anybody who asked a question in the follow-up.
Cool, perfect. Well, sorry we missed the opportunity for that. There was a lot there, but hopefully you got a lot there from what Alice shared. Just a couple of things to go through, and then we will wrap up, and you will get an email after this. As mentioned, is we're always looking at our data. We've got a tremendous amount of data, as you can imagine. So we're releasing constant trend reports. Our most recent is a wake-up call for business leaders. Scan here. You can get it from our website as well. Recent webinar was with Will Roberts from NSTAR, who was great in sharing with us how they've really improved that score around belief in action, what's done there to improve that and engagement in general. Again, you can scan the QR code here, or you can get that later on. What's next? So for our HE audience only, on Wednesday, 26th of June, we've got a webinar with the University of Arts, London. So it's going to be very exciting. And just to give you an update of what's coming at People Insight, and then when it comes to, there's always a tech roadmap. There's a list of things we're learning from our clients. We talk to each other, what else we'll be doing, but we've got a employee lifecycle platforms you can see there coming up that will show you on the different journeys, indices you have currently within your engagement survey or beyond, what that looks like. And also one that I'm very excited about. I do like a good 360, and our platform, our new platform here, is very exciting in what it's going to be offering at an individual level and a group level. So please get in touch if you want to talk about that. I'd be very excited to talk to you about that. Want to know more about anything you heard from this webinar, even outside this webinar, or you're just interested in just asking a simple question, you feel you missed something from this, or you're curious about something, scan this, get in touch, click on that link Ryan shared in the chat box, book a appointment with one of our experts, and we'll be delighted to fit into your diary and have that conversation with you. And as a final slide, just to say thank you very much for each person that has joined. We are planting a tree to say thank you, and a big 100 trees being planted with Alice's name on them to say again, thank you, Alice, for sharing all the insight, taking us through it. You had tremendous energy and excitement about what you wanted to share. I know you love Gleeson. I know you love what you do at Gleeson, and you really believe in it, and I can definitely tell as an organization you've taken people with you on that journey. So thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining, and hope you all join again in another webinar in the future.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much,
Bye-bye.
Costa. Thank you, everybody. Bye.